I want to know everything there is to know about you.
I'm going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
Hello and welcome to the Don't Know Her podcast. As always, I'm Scott.
And I'm Michael. And today we're joined by a very special guest. He is a journalist, he is a film nerd, and he is someone that I'm so grateful is in my life as a big film buff. It's Declan Cashin. Welcome.
Well, hey. Welcome, boys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming along.
And Declan, it's right to say you're a listener of the podcast.
I am.
And here is where we talk about actors who have had careers which have not been as plentiful as we think they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And Declan, who did you come to us with?
I came with one of my queens of mid-90s, early noughties cinema, character actress extraordinaire, Miss Joan Allen.
Woohoo, Joan.
Woohoo.
And, well, for me anyway, I won't speak for you, Scott. I am so grateful. I do not know how, but I seem to have missed a lot of Joan's filmography.
Oh, me too.
It's because you're both children. No, I'm a little bit older, I think. But no, it's funny because she's been someone that's been on my radar for a long time because I think like most people, they kind of got to know her when she was in Nixon opposite Anthony Hopkins. And that was like 95, 96. And she was nominated for an Oscar for that. And that was like the same period where I started kind of becoming a bit of a movie nerd and an Oscars nerd. So like I was like, she was really on my radar then. And then I just became this like massive fan. She had like a run of movies for the next like 5 or 6 years after that, where she was just in everything and there was always a lot of buzz around her. So yeah, she hasn't been in as much recently, hence the podcast, which is probably why the children mightn't know who she is.
Well, I'm taking it because usually I'm the older one that has seen films in the cinema, and Scott's like, I was too young to have seen that when it was initially released. So I'm glad you're here.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's say a little bit about Jo, like her career, a brief overview before we get into some of her films. Because she was born in 1956 in the Midwest. And her career started with the Steppenwolf Theatre Company from 1977, like a huge, influential theatre company in the US, where, like, most famously, John Malkovich became a star from this. And like a true ensemble sort of company, had lots of successes on Broadway, off-Broadway, around the world, winning a Tony in 1988 for Burn This, for Best Actress. Film did start a bit later for her. So her first film was Compromising Promises in 1985, Manhunter 1986, which for those who do not know is a Hannibal Lecter story, which then was remade as Red Dragon. As you've said, Declan, like she worked steadily in theatre and film. It seems like film became a way of, having her family and working. And God, she's working with some amazing people. So as you said, Anthony Hopkins in Oliver Stone's Nixon in 1995, The Crucible, Arthur Miller, adaptation of Arthur Miller play directed by Nicholas Hytner with Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder, which she was also Oscar nominated for. Ang Lee's The Ice Storm, Face Off with Nicolas Cage and John Travolta,
Woo!
Pleasantville, The Contender, The Bourne, Jason Bourne films. Then she's also doing art house films like Sally Potter's Yes. And then later, which maybe the films me and Scott would know her best for, things like The Notebook and Room.
How dare you?
But Room was her last film, which is shocking thinking of that. Like, that's 2015.
Yeah.
So Joan Allen's a 3-time Oscar nominee for Nixon, The Crucible, and The Contender. Mm-hmm. And it seems mad that that's the last movie she's made. She has now done like TV, like Look, The Family, and is it Lacey's Story?
Yeah.
Lacey,
I don't know.
But yeah, like, where are the films? Like, where are the film roles? And why are people not like thinking of her in the same way as you say back in the 90s? Like, she could be anything. She feels like the type of actor that could easily move between roles and tones and filmmakers. So it is strange that she hasn't done that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wake up most mornings thinking about whatever happened to my favorite character actors. What went wrong with their career? And I don't think like her career. I've read some like there aren't even that many interviews with her. She doesn't do an awful lot of press or anything like that. But like I get the sense from her that she's not like particularly bitter or unhappy about how her career has panned out. She kind of designed a lot of it, but it's hard not to escape like the reality of what Hollywood is like for actresses of all ages, really, but especially someone like Joan Allen, who was like 39 or 40 when Nixon happened. And, Hollywood is famously not a very conducive place for, actresses of beyond a certain age. So, I mean, that was probably always going to be a challenge too. But, I always kind of think about her kind of in the same, she kind of emerged in that same wave in the 90s as Julianne Moore, Laura Linney. They are the kind of the two ones that spring to mind the most. And sometimes there's a couple of different things with Joan Allen that I think might have perhaps helped her career at the start, but maybe kind of led to it being not as productive as well. I mean, when you look at Nixon and The Crucible, the two movies that, were kind of big breakthroughs, they were very similar kind of roles in lots of ways, playing the kind of stoic, put upon wife. And she's a very kind of, in both roles, they're very restrained, kind of repressed performances against much showier leading men like an Anthony Hopkins in Nixon and Daniel Day-Lewis in The Crucible. So she was, she's very much like happy to kind of not be, the big center of attention or anything like that. And then, her roles then towards the end of the 90s were all very dramatic as well. And, she probably didn't get the opportunity, or maybe she just wasn't interested in showing, like pursuing more of a kind of a range of roles like comedy or anything like that. Like someone like Laura Linney, who, roughly around the same time or a couple of years after that, like was doing Frasier and then like, doing dramatic roles and, just something that kind of showed, that look, you can cast me, you can imagine me as like a comedian. Even though like Joan Allen has shown throughout her career, certainly in something like The Upside of Anger, that, she has those chops for sure. It's just, I don't know, I think it's a combination of maybe emerging as a kind of an older kind of star, but also just being kind of typecast, I suppose, in a certain kind of patrician, repressed kind of role, which she is brilliant at, but I suppose it could be limiting as well.
For sure. Another thing, like watching her films for this, compared to say someone like Julianne Moore, has this personality which almost is part of her characters. Joan Allen seems to, as you say, which is probably part of her theatre training, steps back and allows her co-stars or the story or the role to take over in a way which, it makes sense. Like you say, like The Upside of Anger is really good examples, because when I was looking at reviews, they were comparing it to Something's Gotta Give, the Nancy Meyers film that had recently come out, with Diane Keating. And Diane Keating is like the epitome of a movie star, and that sort of film is a movie star sort of role. And I do think Joan Allen's very good in The Upside of Anger, but because the quality of the film isn't, very high, it's very hard then I don't know, she has nothing else to rely on. I feel like then that's maybe why it wasn't as big a hit as Something's Gotta Give or something. But it is a shame because she's so good. Like, and you're right, like that like dramatic sort of supporting role, even lead like in something like Sally Potter's Yes, she is amazing. And it's so like kind of nourishing. If you're in the mood to watch a good actor give a good performance, Joan Allen is such a joy to watch. Like in all the films that we watch for this podcast, I was just like, this is so good. Like to watch her with Anthony Hopkins or with Brie Larson or all these people doing these great things. It's just,
and it's not like she doesn't draw attention. Like there isn't any kind of calculation behind her acting either. It is a very natural. She's very still and she's very kind of composed, kind of glacial sometimes. Something like The Ice Storm, which I'll probably end up talking about for about 4 hours because I think she's just so phenomenal in that movie. But so yeah, it's a very kind of natural style as well. There isn't, sometimes with some actors you can see the wheels turning behind the eyes sometimes, but not with her. I just think I love the woman, and she's just such an instinctive kind of performer.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a good time then to talk about The Crucible if we're talking about actors where you can see wheels turning?
Oh boy.
Oh, nice segue, sir.
Yes. Let's do it.
The Crucible is a Salem witch hunt where Joan Allen and her husband, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, become involved because Winona Ryder had an affair with Daniel Day-Lewis, and she's kind of in short, and I'm simplifying it, isn't getting what she wants. So she's playing, you can read it as this, she is playing the town to punish them. Mm-hmm. And Joan Allen is a kind of the moral center almost to this film.
Yeah.
And I started it thinking, Daniel Day-Lewis was going to be the broad performance in this film. But I wasn't really prepared for what the film was, and also Winona Ryder in this movie. I just don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Sorry, Scott, I know I've been talking a lot here, but
please carry on.
It's The Crucible, man. I saw it, I think, not long after it first came out, and I remember not really I didn't get it, I guess. I was probably a bit too young to really understand. I hadn't read the play or anything like that at that stage. So I rewatched it again a few months ago, knowing that we were going to be talking about this, and oh my god, that movie is such a mess. Oh my god, it's so frustrating to watch it now because it would work so much better as just a recorded version of the stage. If it was a stage production of it somewhere, just record that and broadcast it in the cinemas. Because the major problem with it, aside from some of the casting, is that it's just it doesn't adapt it enough into a movie. It's such an airless version of the story. And the thing that threw me off completely was just the scenes of the hysterical, the hysteria amongst the townspeople and the women accused of being witches, and men actually accused of being witches. It's just, that would be, I imagine, I've never seen this on stage, but I could imagine it'd be very stunningly powerful in a theater. But my God, on camera, it's just terrible. This, it's a very bad movie, I think. Anyway, they might have more redeeming things to say about it than I do. Even Daniel Day-Lewis seems miscast, which is weird. Winona Ryder is, I love Winona Ryder. I have a whole separate podcast about why she should have won that Oscar for women instead of Jessica Lange. But this was clearly the studio saying, Winona Ryder, let's put her in it. And
well, I think so Nick Heitner, who directed it, is a very celebrated theatre maker. Mm-hmm. It would make sense. It would make sense for him to adapt this grand epic play about the Crucible has so much going on stage. I've only seen it once, but it works naturally because you're part of the town, you're part of this community trying to decide what's going on.
Yeah.
The most cinematic aspects of the film is the sweeping camera when Winona Ryder's okay, it's suiting me now to create a little bit of hysteria. So I'm, oh my God, look, there's Scott over there coming to chat to me about this.
That's exactly it.
And
it's not that means it's not an adaptation. It's a staging with fancy camera work. And look, this is a similar problem. Someone again, a whole other podcast ranting and raving about Tom Hooper, who I think is the worst director of the last 20 years. What he did with Les Mis, which was a disaster as well. Just that kind of, a swooping camera shot isn't direction. You know what I mean? This isn't adapting as a hit play. Anyway, but yeah, bring it back to the woman of the hour. Joan Allen, she plays the kind of the cheated wife who's been embarrassed, in front of the local town, and she's accused of witchcraft, and she kind of she has a couple of key scenes throughout the movie, but then really it's towards the end where her and John, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, have this kind of final scene before he is executed. I can't remember if she is due to be executed too. I think he is the one
Yes.
She is, yeah. Mm-hmm. But she just delivers this speech.
I counted myself so plain,
so poorly made that no honest love could come to me. Suspicion kissed you when I did. I never knew how I should say my love. It were a cold house I kept.
Oh, my love. Oh, my love.
Forgive me, I never knew such goodness in the world. Oh, John, forgive me.
Really gutting kind of final scene, like, you know, and people have won Oscars for smaller or for less than that, and I just thought, like, we watched that scene so many times because I just think she's so powerful in it.
Yeah, no, she is. She's incredibly impressive in what you describe as an otherwise not impressive film. But I think we'd be remiss because I don't think we've said his name yet. So this is based on an Arthur Miller play, and Arthur Miller also adapted this for the screen, and for his efforts was nominated wrongly for an Oscar. But of course, they wanted to throw that nomination at him. But it must be that because so I was in the Crucible at school, but only for, and this is where it gets worse.
Wait. Tell me what part you took. Tell me you played the Winona Ryder part.
I wish I played the Winona Ryder part. So this was for higher drama at school in Scotland, and it was my like assessment piece, and I played John Proctor. And what?
I bet you were better than Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh, I mean, I went much broader, but I don't think the part of John Proctor is a natural fit for a gay as I am. I don't. It didn't come tremendously naturally. But then from remembering these lines, because they are seared into my head, and all of the like, oh, goody Proctor, and all of these things were kind of identical. So it's almost like I don't think he really adapted this as much as it was just kind of taken in parts verbatim where they shouldn't have been. It is really stilted, and I think it's a shame because it is an exciting play and it would have so much room to be so much more than it is, but the only standout part of it is Joan Allen, as you say, who is tremendous in these moments, and I guess she probably, you know, lost a bit of weight to kind of play the end sequences. She's quite skeletal when she's standing in the courtroom and kind of addressing the court for things that she did not do. And the vulnerability is incredible. And to go back to what you were saying at the beginning about Joan being this sort of reliable performer who does not need to be giving more, she strips it back, she plays it simply. And even here she does. I guess it's just sort of more of the makeup or kind of her physical changes to play it that might be more out there than what she is doing, which is still very contained, even in these tremendously emotional moments. I think she is incredible, and I think justly nominated for an Oscar for this against performers who are doing a far worse job.
Yeah. Well, it's her and Paul Scofield that really make the film watchable.
Yeah.
Paul Scofield plays the guy that comes into the town to like basically make these hangings and burning to the stake and all this thing.
I forgot Scofield. Yeah, I should say Scofield is fantastic in it too. Yeah.
He's so good. But they're the only two actors, I think, nearly the whole thing, which make that language seem natural. Yeah. Like to watch Daniel Day-Lewis struggle with some of those that text. It's like, this is such a shame because there would be so many actors that could do that.
Schofield and Joan Allen are the stage actors, you know, like that's the thing that will, you know, so that will be the one that, it's Schofield actually could have been an Oscar nominee, I think, as well, if there had been.
Oh, for sure.
I'm surprised he wasn't really, because he'd done Crucible a couple of years before that and had been nominated for, you know, a smaller role even than that.
Yeah. And he did win the BAFTA for supporting actor, so there was some love for him. But the film as a whole, I know you're saying, like, he did get a screenplay and Joan Allen, but thankfully it easily could have been the sort of thing the Academy embraced, but they rightfully kind of pushed it aside.
Film's so bad, even the Academy wouldn't nominate it.
Yeah, exactly. Love it. And then I guess, like, on the flip side, like the film that came before that, and I would say is incredibly cinematic, is Nixon, where she plays Pat Nixon, the wife of Anthony Hopkins' Nixon, as his president. Like, what a film. I was dreading. This is the film I was dreading the most to watch.
Yeah, he said this numerous times how much he was dreading this.
In fact, I've watched all the movies usually, and I said to Scott, I'm not watching this. There's no way.
Yeah.
But then I sat down and I was absorbed. I just loved it. It's 3.5 hours watching like quite a nasty man go through his kind of presidency, and I actually really loved the movie. Like, I really liked it.
Great.
Yeah, I was the same. I had seen it many years ago, but rewatched it again recently, and I watched it actually towards the end of last year because I was living with 2 roommates at the time, and we were kind of watching all these kind of American presidential films around the time of the 2020 election. And so we sat down for like an entire Friday evening watching Nixon. And I was kind of like, I was surprised because I love JFK, the movie JFK. And I always had remembered Nixon as being kind of like a subpar, version of that or sequel to that. But it immersive is the word. Like, it's hard not to get swept up in how mad and intense it is. Like, it's quite a different movie to JFK in lots of ways. It's not as I don't know. It's weird to describe an Oliver Stone movie as tight, but like JFK is a much tighter story, I think, than what they're doing in Nixon. And Joan Allen she's not in it a huge amount, but she has some like key scenes. And again, it's those scenes that she kind of underplays against Anthony Hopkins being all shuffly and she brings this kind of real sadness to it, and it's like she can see. It's like from the get-go she could see him for who he really is, and you can almost see it in her eyes that she can almost predict how this is all going to pan out long before any of the crimes happened. She's great in it, and it's interesting because it's Nixon kind of, I think, ended up doing better that year at the Oscars than people had kind of anticipated. Like, Hopkins got nominated. It got a screenplay nomination, I think maybe editing or something as well. So like she was part of a pretty big surge for Nixon towards the end, but I don't think she was ever, like with this and The Crucible, I don't think she ever really had a chance of winning. There was just too many other buzzy performers or breakthrough performers. By breakthrough, I mean younger. That we're going to get the lion's share.
Yeah, it is that like ghostliness in this. She sort of feels trapped in the house, and she's there and in the background, and sometimes she is just there and she says nothing, and I find that incredibly powerful. I mean, you could argue also maybe underused or whatever, but I like the energy she's bringing. But then sometimes she does interject with kind of really cutting statements, which I think is great. I think my favorite moment of hers is when he announces his presidency and she walks into the room and she's like,
"So you've decided? Were you planning to tell me?"
I haven't announced anything yet.
And she still does it with the same sort of calm that she brings to her other roles. It's amazing. She's like out of another time in this. Yeah. It's really, I mean, the whole film is so unusual for a 90s film. I don't know, it feels, I was going to say like a 60s, 70s film, but I'm not even sure. It just feels kind of alien and absurd. But she just slots really, really nicely into this. And it's amazing casting. She is pitching it like perfectly against again kind of reliably big performers who, in all fairness to them, are maybe doing less than they have done in other things, but she just is pitching this beautifully and kind of hitting it in the way that just makes her cut through the noise of a very kind of wild film.
And she looks so like Pat Nixon as well. Like, if you've looked at pictures of Pat Nixon, she looks like, I want to shake the hand of whatever casting director found Joan Allen for that role and cast her. I'm sure Stone had a lot to do with it too, but he really did the film world a good service by kind of bringing her to prominence.
When it started, I was afraid it was going to be Nixon at like this low point, reflecting on his life, which it kind of is. But Joan's Pat Nixon, she's used as kind of a device to structure it a little bit. and her saying, like, because he's reflecting a lot of, like, I want to be like JFK in certain ways. She's like,
you want them to love you.
Oh, I don't. Stop. I'm not Jack.
They never will, Dick. No matter how many elections you win, they never will.
And she really, as you say, like, pierces through all this, all the noise of the movie. And by noise, I mean that as a positive. It's like there's so much happening.
That scene you were talking about, Michael, where she's like, you know, you're not going to be Jack Kennedy. You know, they're never going to like you. That was her Oscar clip. That was the clip they showed when she was
makes
nominated.
sense.
It's a brilliant moment for her, you know.
But yeah, I highly recommend Nixon. For 3.5 hours, it flew by. It was great.
It's a wild movie, but it actually is really absorbing. I think the two people I watched it with were really surprised by how much they were taken in by it too.
So, and I actually haven't seen JFK or W. Is that what you say? But I will definitely watch both of those now.
JFK is magnificent. W less so.
No, it is wild, and I mean, not that he needs a lot of praise because he is the most praised film composer of all time, but John Williams' score in this is very bold and ambitious, and I love this sort of Disney villain type scoring towards the end, like the strings and winds as if they are like the howling gale coming through the house. It's like, this is just getting wilder and wilder. Did Declan, did you say this was your first, like, Joan Allen? Was this your entry point for Joan? Right.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't realized it that, you know, I think because I had seen Peggy Sue Got Married, like, back in the day on videotape, which is because I was a massive Kathleen Turner nerd as well. And she's in that in a kind of a smaller role. So but that's the definition of these kind of character actors, that you only kind of realize that you've seen them in loads of things after you kind of get to know them. But Nixon was the first time she had really kind of the name and just, I guess, this is such a gay boy answer. Like, you know, I just thought she was fabulous. You know, she was this like tall, blonde, you know, she just looked so just imposing or something, and just so in control and just classy, I guess is the word I was looking for. So I quickly became pretty obsessed.
Do you know what? My first, like, knowing who Joan Allen was the first year I got into the Oscars, which was the year Gladiator and Julia Roberts and Joan Allen being nominated for The Contender. And I remember watching The Contender because I watched them all, even Traffic, even though I didn't understand what the hell was going. I was like 13 or 14, and honest, I was like, oh, look, Catherine Zeta-Jones has this like cocaine gnome. I don't know what that means, but but at least she looks great. But yeah, The Contender went way over my head. So I'm really glad that I rewatched it for this, particularly after, you know, the whole Me Too movement. A lot have progressed since The Contender has been made.
That is I saw that when it first came out because I was 20 at the time, you know, so it was I was going to the cinema, you know, instead of going to my lectures in university. So I remember loving it at the time because the West Wing had just started, and I was like big into American politics, and I loved that this was kind of tackling their theme. Plus, I remember at the time it was written and directed by a guy named Rod Lurie, who was actually a writer for Empire at the time, and I was a massive reader of Empire. So I was like, oh God, it's like it's like a friend of mine made a movie, and like I really liked the movie up until a certain point when I just feel like it kind of I don't know, it wraps itself up a bit too neatly, I think, you know, considering what it's about. I mean, maybe we should probably give a bit of description of it so people, because I'm not sure if many people have seen it.
Well, it is kind of detailing it's about a presidential or vice presidential run. So we have a vice presidential candidate who dies, and then they're looking to sort of fill the spot. And they kind of approach Joan Allen's character. I can't remember her name. What's her name in it? Senator
Laney Scott, I thought, maybe, or Laney something. It's Laney anyway.
Yes, and it's sort of then this push for it to be a woman and first kind of vice presidential candidate. It's funny how kind of things have come back around and looking back at this now. And kind of more importantly from that, of course, as we have seen as well, you have everyone on the kind of her kind of antagonistic side looking to take her down and digging up these things from her past and finding that she had sexual escapades when she was at college, as if nobody has. And then they try and use this to destroy her run and kind of stop her from getting the vote for vice president.
Have you seen this?
That's my file on you, Senator.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get it?
Have you read it yet?
How did you get it? Have you read it?
What do you have to say for yourself?
With all due respect, I'm senator. It doesn't matter what I have to say for myself.
Oh, it doesn't. Well, it seems to me, Mr. Chairman, that all you can claim about me is that I had sex while
Deviant sex.
Oh, who deviant? Who says it was deviant?
I do. And what I say, the American people will believe. And you know why? Because I'll have a very big microphone in front of me.
It's quite it's a good setup in some ways of a film. Jeff Bridges plays the president, and he wants to. There's a more obvious candidate, and he wants to. What was it like? Does he say I want to push through the glass ceiling with one of my last acts?
He wants a legacy. I think that's what
he wants a legacy. Yeah, and so he thinks this will be. Which is watching it now, you're like, surely, there's more, there's something more important you could be. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important to have a first female vice, but surely we'd be working for more than that now.
It's an interesting one, I think. I mean, I think at the time it was really topical because I remember the 2000 election, the early days of the primary, maybe probably a year or two before this had started. Before the 2000 election. I think Elizabeth Dole, who is a Republican politician, was running in the primary, was considering a run for the Republican nomination in 2000. This was towards the end of the Clinton presidency, and so everyone, even back then, everyone was like, "Well, Hillary's going to run for president." That she was about to run for the Senate in New York. So there was a lot of kind of focus on women in politics, especially women in the White House. So I mean, it felt very topical, and I remember it being it got nominated for these 2 acting Oscars, so I remember it being quite well received. I just don't think it's, and she's magnificent, and Jeff Bridges I think is great in it too. He's just so good, so good. I mean, the sharks. He has a shark. There's a scene where he's eating a shark sandwich when he's talking to Christian Slater, who plays a reporter, and it's just so good. Like the power dynamic is just so brilliant. So and they play really well together.
Are you asking me to step down, sir?
No, it's not going to be that easy for you, and it's not going to be that easy for them. They caught you being a human being, that's all.
It's just, I think the movie would have aged an awful lot better if it didn't, I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, if it didn't kind of lose the courage of its convictions in kind of the closing kind of few minutes of it. I think it really, really hinders the movie and the success of the movie.
It's just so kind of apologetic. It's like, okay, so we're talking about something kind of edgy about a woman in politics. So we're going to make sure that people feel comfortable when the film is over.
Yeah, I mean, those issues that we've been talking about I'm not entirely sure about the process of making the movie, but it strikes me that there was probably a lot of competing voices trying to influence how the direction this movie was going in, because it is a bit all over the place, like it feels like 3 different movies in one sometimes.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's sad because I think the movie sets itself up to be something far more interesting if it had just kept on the track, but then when it kind of derails itself with its twist or just bit at the end, it's a real shame, and especially because it's then not living up to what she's doing as a performer, which is quite cerebral and really interesting and exciting, but then it just becomes, it mutes even her performance and everything she's been doing, because you suspect there's something hiding, and it's going to become actually even darker. That's what I was thinking. This is going to become darker. From the poster of her eyes and everything, you're like, there's going to be more to this. and then it just falls the other way, and that was a big shame for me as well.
And it's a real shame because like the way it's set up is that you're going to watch this powerful woman be in power, but instead we're watching a movie where she's just being kicked down further and further until the film's like, let's give her a little bit of a break. And it's like, oh, what the hell? But Gary Oldman, who was an executive producer on it, has quite openly talked about the film changing during the production and him being very unhappy with the end result. So I guess it's not surprising. It's a bit of for all of that, it's not the worst film I've ever seen.
Oh God, no.
It's just really engaging and still very entertaining and fun to watch. And speaking of Gary Oldman, I found it refreshing watching him here because I've gotten so used to the stodgier Gary Oldman, and I was delighted to be reminded of this fresher, more exciting one. And to my ear, doing a pitch perfect accent, I didn't realize it was him straight away. Actually, it took me a couple of scenes, and I was like, oh, of course.
That was an era when, like, you know, a lot of movie people were really excited about Gary Oldman because he disappeared into those kind of roles, and he can't really do that anymore.
No.
But with The Contender, it's like, I mean, this was Joan Allen's Best Actress nomination. And, you know, given, you know, some of the ambivalence about the movie and how it was received, you know, it was clearly like some sort of, you know, this woman is on a momentum. You know, she's had a really strong couple of years. But I mean, she was never going to win. This was Julia Roberts' year for Erin Brockovich. I mean, there's probably the most sure
do not forget years. Juliette Binoche and Chocolat was a close second, I'm pretty certain.
Thanks. Juliette Binoche was lucky to be there, okay? But one last thing on The Contender is that it was actually a pivotal movie for Joan Allen, I think, in more ways than one, because I think it did kind of, you know, when you look at, like, when she ended up doing the Bourne movies and everything after this, it kind of established her as this, like, go-to authority figure almost. Like, she can play presidents, you know, the head of the CIA or whatever. Like, she casts that kind of authoritative kind of feeling. And I think, you know, that was probably a big, again, probably sent her down a certain casting route for a couple of years after it.
Yeah, no, definitely. To sort of bring it back to, so Michael, you're talking about this being your entry point in Nixon, before that being yours, Declan. Mine, strangely, although you suggested it might have been Michael as The Notebook or other along that era of time, but no, it was, to my memory anyway, the incredible The Ice Storm, Ang Lee's 1997 masterpiece. I'm a huge fan, and it was one of those things. So I watched it when I was, I guess, fairly young, and I had, I think, that book that many people have, the kind of massively thick coffee table, 1001 movies to see before you die. It was one of the ones that consistently does appear in that book. And I remember being like, oh, what's this? So I don't know if I was familiar with her at the time, but it certainly became very familiar after that. It is quite something.
She's amazing. I mean, that film is, I honestly do not know how I've never seen it. So I've watched it twice since I watched it for this podcast, so it started a while ago, but like hypnotized again by it. I love Ang Lee. Like, Ang Lee is so good, and he's, I'm just like, and I just rewatched like Sense Sensibility there. Like, this guy totally understands dynamics and social norms and characters that struggle to express themselves. And The Ice Storm is just this wonderful story set in the 70s over like one weekend about two families. And Joan Allen is the wife to Calvin Klein, who's having an affair with the neighbor, Sigourney Weaver, whose sons are interacting, let's say, with Joan Allen's daughter, played by Christina Ricci. It's just, there's just so much, and there's a storm, and there's this party, and there's like a key party, and there's just so much going on, and it is so beautiful. It's just such a beautiful film in all ways. And Joan Allen, at the start, Sigourney Weaver is playing quite I mean, she's basically playing the type of character I'm surprised is not more of a meme or something. So she's having an affair, and Kevin Kline is talking, and she's like, if I wanted to be bored, I'd sleep with my husband. Like that sort of thing. And Joan Allen she's quiet, Joan Allen. She's more reserved, and it's kind of towards the end is where she has her moment. And God, when she has it,
it really builds. Yeah, it really builds like it really is like a kind of an ensemble movie. Like it's such a fascinating late 90s kind of time capsule because it the thing about the Ice Storm, I could talk about this movie for days. I mean, Ang Lee was kind of coming off that Sense and Sensibility success, even though he hadn't been nominated for an Oscar for Sense and Sensibility. The movie had been a big hit and had won other awards. The Ice Storm was seen as kind of his big, American tackle a big American dream, a big American theme movie. This amazing cast. I mean, like you mentioned, Klein, Weaver, Joan Allen as the kind of adult characters, but then you had Christina Ricci, Elijah Wood, Adam Hanbird. Who's the other kid?
Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire. Katie Holmes. Good Lord, I forgot she was in it when she popped up. And this amazing young cast, and it came out. I don't really know. I guess it's a hard movie to sell. Remember it was 97. It's only like 20 years on, I guess, maybe from the period it's documenting. Maybe it felt too soon. Maybe there was a bit of 70s fatigue at that point. People just weren't interested. And look, it's not the most, like, it is by as the name suggests, it's quite a chilly kind of movie. You're not going to be like, this isn't a feel-good fare. And it's interesting because I think the Ice Storm's legacy today is kind of talked very much in conjunction with like, oh, it did what American Beauty did 2 years before American Beauty, but that was the one that was the big success. But with the Ice Storm, like it's an ensemble piece. Sigourney Weaver, I think, was the one that kind of got the most attention. I think her and actually Christina Ricci, if memory serves, they were the ones that were the big focal points for that movie, and they're both phenomenal. I think Christina Ricci, rewatching this again was just a reminder of, I mean, I'm talking about her as if she's in the past tense, but you just don't see her doing it as much. She was such an electrifying performer.
Oh yeah,
as a teenager. Oh my God, that girl is so good, and she's so like. I probably of all the characters or actors in this movie, she seems to be the one that she understood the assignment. Like she fully understands what this movie is trying to do and what it is. I could rave about her for days, and Weaver, plays the kind of sex kitten, kind of bad mother, bad wife, and she's brilliant at it. Like Joan Allen, like she's again just seems like the put upon wife, the ignored wife, the repressed, frustrated wife. But then the movie kind of becomes about her in the last like 20 minutes or 30 minutes, because I was thinking about it at the time, like that. If this movie had kind of taken off and was getting some awards attention like it deserved, would she have been the lead or the supporting player in it? And in retrospect, I kind of wish they had pushed her as supporting, because I think if this movie had momentum, her and like it could have been the case that her and Weaver would have been up against each other. I don't know, but like for me, that year's supporting actress race is pretty weak. Kim Basinger wins for LA Confidential, which is fine, I guess, but like it's not spectacular. But like this is Joan Allen's, like this is really her, I think, her like masterful performance. This is the one, if you were to recommend one movie of hers to watch, this is the one to see.
And she's utilized so well in it, like just all the things we've talked about, how she's good because she's always present, she's like supporting all these people, but then the film is, as you say, like it is kind of her she brings us to the ending. Like I'm not going to spoil things, but the way that her story unfolds, it's just really interesting. And I guess the difference with, say, something like, say, American Beauty, it's like it's not wrapped up very neatly in that it's not satisfying. No. American Beauty is a comedy, firstly, so I think that makes it easier for people to watch. But it's art. Like we know that Lester is going to be dead by the end of the film. I mean, and even then, people didn't mind seeing Kevin Spacey being killed.
Also, I think like the big thing with American Beauty was that if you get the sense that it's making fun of the characters, whereas that's not what's happening here at all. Like it's actually, the film feels very sad for all of these characters, I think, which is probably why watching it feels so kind of heavy and oppressive, because it's just a really sad. Everyone is so catatonic in this movie. Like they're all. And it's commented on quite a lot that everyone seems, are they okay? They seem a bit off. Everyone is in a daze almost in this movie, which is why it's one of the things that makes it such a fascinating film to watch.
And they're so bored with their life in some ways, in that they like fumble into problems. So like Kevin Kline sees his daughter in Sigourney Weaver's house, and she's about to have sex or do something with Elijah Wood. And he tells his wife, Joan Allen, about it.
and they're on the floor, and he's got his trousers undone, though thank goodness she was still dressed. Well, I really let him have it, and Wendy came home peacefully.
So, what were you doing in the Carver's basement anyway?
And he hasn't even clocked that, like, I'm basically telling her I was sleeping with Sigourney Weaver. And then he just creates all these problems. It's just like, but he doesn't care enough to do anything about that.
They're all just kind of this apathetic, kind of self-absorbed. And I mean, I remember at the time it was kind of being described as like, you know, this movie about America in the 70s, about how America had become probably a bit too self-satisfied and was sleepwalking through like Vietnam and Nixon, and kind of it come out of the 60s and America was in a very dark place. And I think the movie, if you were to look at The Ice Storm just as a movie about a period in the 70s, it captures that brilliantly. But yeah, it's because everyone is so out of it in this movie, when people, or when the characters, or when the story kind of shocks them to life, it's so stunning to watch it. Like, there are a couple of bits where like certain characters, things happen to them, or they kind of react to things, and it's I just think it's so. And again, Joan Allen, as the movie kind of builds, she has this kind of big, I don't know, breakthrough, I guess, and it's just it's uncomfortable to watch in places. She carries it so well. She's phenomenal, and I think it's just the best thing she's ever done.
Yeah, I agree. And I also I kind of like the American Beauty comparison point, because I mean, American Beauty was one of those films for me when I was really getting into cinema that I thought was like the greatest thing ever. This is like as perfect as it can get. And as you know, the years have gone by, and a lot has changed, and the lead performers in that film getting themselves into very problematic situations, its legacy is weakened. But even without that, watching it back, it isn't what I thought it was when I was younger. Whereas this one only grows and gets more interesting. And I guess something that does make them both similar is kind of their approach to kind of metaphors. But this one seems to be more gentle about it, whereas American Beauty is literally like smacking you in the face with them, in a very kind of stylistic way, whereas this is less interested in that. But there is that kind of nice moment with the Invisible Woman comic books that he's reading in the train, and then it cuts to Joan Allen, and you're like, okay, so this is how she's viewed, this is how people see her. But then her arc kind of changes that idea and plays with it, and then she's absolutely not the Invisible Woman. I think it's just, it's amazing. It's an amazing film full of amazing performers. But I actually do also think it's pretty funny. I mean, it's not in the same way that American Beauty is, but there is that great moment where Christina Ricci's asking for money for her band costume.
They need the money at school for my band uniform.
I thought you quit the band. I never hear you practice anymore.
Yeah, well, I don't really need to practice. I just play a few notes anyway, so I figured I'd just stay in.
Well, I'm sure your father and I would love to hear what you're playing these days. Maybe after dinner?
It's really, really funny just playing those two notes back and forth. And I was also a brass band player when I was at school, and it is just like, this is brilliant.
Yeah, Ricci, Weaver, and Allen, and Joan Allen, the three of them in this movie are just like the best, like amongst the three best performances of the 90s by women, if you ask me. They're just...
I also don't think you get many films focused on women, even today, really, which allow them to have their like sexual experiences. Like, we're going back to American Beauty a lot, but Annette Bening's sexual like reawakening is a joke. Like, it's a total joke that she's sleeping with her competitor, like, who in the housing estate market.
Yeah.
But the sexuality of Christina Ricci, Weaver, and Allen is treated really respectfully and also really interestingly. Like, if you were to compare Ricci with Thora Birch in American Beauty, like there is no comparison to what is being dealt with there.
I know. I rewatched it. I mean, I rewatched The Ice Storm actually just yesterday before recording this, and I hadn't watched it in a while, and I was actually really nervous about watching it if it would hold up. But as Scott was saying, it actually is even better than I remember. I did feel I have problems with Tobey Maguire as an actor, so I'm not
same.
crazy about his framing in the movie. But you know, I obviously was watching this for the Joan Allen element of it, and I think she is. But honestly, the thing I just can't shake Christina Ricci from this movie. Like, I just think that's such a fearless performance for a young actress, and like a really tricky role. Like, you know, she does things in this movie that are not okay, and like, you know, it's such a fascinating movie. I mean, this
You'll have to come back.
You know, he's good.
You'll have to come back for our Christina Ricci episode because I mean, there's so much.
Oh my god!
Firstly, Casper's part of my like film.
Casper, Adam Ben. Well, it's fascinating because she did Ice Storm and The Opposite of Sex kind of 1 year apart, and they are brilliant companion pieces. I love. Anyway, that's the Christina Ricci one.
Another time.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about like repressed wives and mothers in the past, well, I guess Pleasantville is a great way. But also Pleasantville, she's playing a soap opera mother and wife, and also has Tobey Maguire in it in an even more kind of unappealing sort of performance.
I really don't like him as an actor. It's really good. It's really come up for me recently in lots of things. Yeah, I mean, again, Pleasantville seems like it's a really kind of typical kind of Joan Allen role in some ways. You know, this kind of prim and proper, repressed, glacial housewife or wife who's literally starts having some color brought back into her life, and she kind of discovers her passion. Literally is bringing color back into her life. Yeah. It's a beautifully rendered movie. Again, a movie I feel that probably doesn't really have the courage of its convictions ultimately in the end, but she's great in it. It's just, it doesn't feel like her movie as much as other movies that she's been in, even though her kind of sexual and emotional awakening, I guess, is really key to it. And she can play that in her sleep, I think. I think it came so soon after the Ice Storm that for me, the Ice Storm is always going to be the one that shades it.
Shades it. You're using all the right.
Nice work.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, Pleasantville's such a fascinating movie. I was kind of like in awe of it at times. Like when she comes out and he's like, "Oh my god, like what's happening to me?" And then Tobey Maguire in one of his better scenes applies this black and white makeup on her.
Gorgeous scene, yeah.
What? Does it look okay?
Yeah, it looks just like it did.
And they won't be able to tell.
No, they won't be able to tell.
And then she falls in love with this like frustrated painter played by Jeff Daniels.
Yeah.
Oh, so I was really moved by it. But you're right. Yeah, she could do that in her sleep. And the film isn't a few tweaks to the concept, let's say, or the how the concept's developed would have made that film one of the best films ever made. But something about it is a bit off, or a few things about it are a bit off.
It's just more pedestrian than it should have been, perhaps.
Yeah.
But she is amazing in it. But like you're saying about her being able to do it in her sleep, what I found kind of struck me about her in it this time is I was like, you are, and I hadn't seen this in her, not recognized before, because I think of her as a very contemporary performer. But she reminded me, I know it's sort of how she's playing it and how it's written and everything and how she's dressed, but she was like a classic Hollywood star, and she had that look and she had it down, and just the energy and the presence just felt like she could have come out of another time and would be recognized as that kind of star. And that really struck me. I was like, this is not how I've ever thought about you. Even when you've played similarly, I do think about like the Ice Storm, I think of as a very contemporary performance. Whereas this, I was like, oh, you can really nail that more classic golden age of Hollywood type stuff too.
When you say golden age of Hollywood, though, you are talking about when Nicolas Cage met John Travolta, right?
Of course. Absolutely.
Oh man,
what a movie! Face Off, which I guess we might have all seen like years ago when it first came out, and it's one of those movies, Con Air, like there's all these big '90s films, but rewatching it is It is madder than I remember.
Mad.
Guys, I only watched it for the first time yesterday in advance of this.
Whoa.
Because I have problems with Nicolas Cage and John Travolta as performers, but I actually didn't even know Joan Allen was in this. It was only when I was doing my research, so I said I'd watch it. And I have to say, I think it is a flat-out masterpiece of a movie.
Yeah.
It is just bonkers. I've rarely seen a movie lean into its madness as much as this movie does. But again, she plays John Travolta's wife in it. I mean, I'm sure everyone is kind of familiar with Face Off. You know, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta basically swap. Travolta's the cop, Cage is the villain. They swap faces and lives to try and outwit each other.
We created this like scientific thing. Why did we do this? And you're like, I'm so sorry, but I know the film. There's no time to describe it. It's like, do it.
It is dumb, and it is brilliant. It's so well done. But Joan Allen plays John Travolta's wife, and actually, Joe, I was thinking about it afterwards because she's actually really critical to that movie's silliness working because nobody is buying. Because you have Travolta playing Cage, playing Travolta, and Cage playing Travolta, playing Cage, or whatever.
Yeah,
and you have to. The audience has to buy that Nicolas Cage is, that John Travolta is. Oh God, I'm so confused now myself.
No, John Travolta is Nicolas Cage when he comes into her room.
When he comes into when he comes home, and if she doesn't buy it, we don't buy it, and she falls for it at first. She's kind of the audience in some respects with this as well, even though we have more information. But like her accepting this, because it's Joan Allen, and she had been established at this point as being this kind of like, I don't know, authority or like trusted, classy actress, are playing these.
And she's a doctor, isn't she, as well in the film?
Doctor in it too. He's actually kind of like it's quite inspired casting. I'd love to talk to her and find out like how that script got to her because
it's all pretty inspired.
Yeah, she also has quite an important part because she's the one that has to like scientifically prove who is who. So she like sleeps beside the murderer of her child so that she can prick some blood from him to then test the DNA. And it's all wild and silly, but she's making it like great. Yeah, like she's given something to do. I was really nervous because I couldn't remember at all, like yourself, from like being in this movie. But I just thought, oh shit, she's going to either die really quickly or something. She's going to be, and she's a damsel in distress for a bit of it, but she does have more agency than you would think for a wife-type character in a 90s film.
At one point, she, in one of the battles towards the end, she breaks a chair off one of the bad guys' back. And I was like, where was the Joan Allen action movie? Where was Joan Allen's The River Wild back in the day? Like, this is what I wanted. I would have loved to have seen her get those kind of opportunities to play those kind of, like, to show that range and challenge herself and stretch herself like that, because there's just it was so much fun to see her in that kind of environment. But like again, she had done, Face Off and the Bourne movies are probably the movies that most people have seen her in. But like she just fits into every kind of, you could put her in any genre, I think, and she'd somehow make it work.
Yeah.
No, exactly that. But just holding on it for 1 second, do you agree that this is like John Travolta at his most like exciting or interesting? Because this, like, between him and Nick Cage, they're both doing a lot, but I was like, what in the fuck when I first watched this? Like, whoa, like John Travolta being Nick Cage is a wild thing to see.
Yeah. And it's funny because, as I said, I hadn't seen this before. And when I was watching, and it's a long movie, like this movie goes on, but like, and at the start, it has like, it makes these really mad, like broad character establishing kind of shots of, John or Nicolas Cage being the kind of mad, manic one, and John Travolta this kind of like dour, angry, and it's really like full on. And then you're kind of all right. They have to establish that like the characters are like this, so that when they're acting as the other one, you can kind of tell that. And as the movie goes on, I was kind of like, both of them are doing incredible work in this movie. Like genuinely, like it's one of the most surprised. Like I sound like such a snob now. I haven't watched it, but like. It's genuinely one of the most surprising movies I've ever watched, I think, in that like it just defied my expectations completely, not just for like the two actors, but like John Woo, like the action direction in this, the support, Gina Gershon was in it, Joan Allen is in it, like it's just so well done. Like, this is one of the best action movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. So talking about like Joan Allen could do anything, let's talk about what she could do in the future, or what we'd love her to do. But before that, let us do a quiz. And now that we have a guest, I'm going to pitch you two against each other. And we're going to see who knows the world of Joan Allen better.
I'm dreading it. I don't stand a fucking chance, but let's have a go.
Okay. So guys, what we're going to do here, I'm going to ask one of you a question first. If you get it right, you get that point. If not, it goes on to the next person, and we'll continue that way. And there is a tiebreaker, which I really hope we get to, because I like this question. And it is about Joan Allen. So, as you're our guest, Declan, you're going to go first.
Yes.
What does Joan Allen have in common with Angela Lansbury, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Deborah Winger? Amongst others, I should say, to maybe give you a bit of help, but those are the three that came to mind.
Oh my God, I am...
And I should say you can all get one hint each for each question.
I'm going to need a hint for this, I think.
It's to do with the Oscars, of course.
Is it that they were nominated for Oscars 2 years in a row?
Okay, so my answer was not your answer, and I'm going to give you a special extra point for that.
That's so great.
What was your answer?
So mine was that they had 3 Oscar nominations without a win. But yours is way more better. Like, that's such good trivia.
That is very impressive.
What can I say, guys?
Wow.
So, Scott, what's the square root of... okay, well, what does Joan Allen have in common with Juliette Binoche, Ellen Burstyn, and Laura Linney?
Juliette Binoche, Ellen Burstyn, and Laura Linney, that they were all nominated for an Oscar in the year 2000.
Oh, I couldn't tell you the year, but yeah, they all lost to Julia Roberts. Correct.
Bravo.
Yay.
Thanks.
Okay, this is, I hope, is a bit trickier, Declan. Can you name a woman who has played both a First Lady and a Vice President in their filmography? Alongside, because Joan Allen obviously has played the Vice President in The Contender and the First Lady in Nixon.
So another actress.
Another actress, yeah.
Who played President and Vice President.
No, played First Lady and played Vice President.
Vice President and First Lady. Oh, okay. Can I get a hint?
I will say that she is playing... Go on.
Mary McDonnell.
Oh, for fuck's sake. This is another one where I've actually had a different person.
Oh, well, she was president in Battlestar Galactica, so it's not exactly president of the United States or anything, but she played...
Oh, well, I was saying vice president. That was very important. And actually, okay, so she's this person is vice president, but takes over presidential powers in this action 90s film.
I know exactly.
It's Glenn Close.
Yes!
Yeah!
She's vice president in Air Force One, another classic, same year as Face Off, and she was first lady in Mars Attacks.
Yeah! And,
God.
well, I don't want to give bonus points, but she has like one of my all-time favorite death scenes in Mars Attacks, where the aliens are like attacking the White House, and she's obsessed with like the aesthetics of it. Yeah. And she thinks she's going to be shot. She's not. But they shoot the chandelier, which she's obsessed with, and she stares at it and says whatever the chandelier is as it comes crashing down and kills her.
She has some very dramatic face reactions in it too. I was gonna answer initially that it was Mary McDonnell because she played the First Lady in Independence Day.
Mm-hmm. True.
Also, she was president in Battlestar Galactica, but not necessarily the American president. But you know, maybe that might get me some bonus.
No more bonus points. Just 1 point. Scott.
Yes.
What does Joan Allen and Emily Watson have in common?
Joan Allen and Emily Watson.
The great British actor who, she's another underrated great actor.
Hugely. Joan Allen and Emily Watson. They must have played the same...
You're going down the right road. That would be my hint.
Okay. Played the same part. Fudge, what could it be? Joan Allen, Emily Watson. What if they both played?
But what I will say, this is part of like a cinematic universe, which is unlikely to be a cinematic universe. There's an Oscar-winning film in it. There's a TV show.
Oh, I am like, I've got nothing.
Yeah, I'm drawing a total blank as well.
Oh no!
A cinematic universe, but if something where there's multiple entries. Emily Watson. So one of them's done like in a film and one in television, or
No, they're both on film, but it's a remake. So one was in 1986. That's the Joan Allen bit or performance, and the remake with Emily Watson was 2002.
Oh shit! Manhunter Hannibal. No, is it that?
They both played the same part. Yeah, they both played Reba McClane.
Yes.
Right.
The blind.
The blind, yeah.
Yes.
Really, and quite like the most memorable part of Red Dragon, really, for me.
For sure, yeah.
Great, okay. So you're winning, Declan, with 3 points to Scott's 2. This is another tricky question, I hope. What do Blythe Danner, Frances McDormand, and Glenda Jackson have in common in relation to Joan Allen?
Blythe Danner, Glenda Jackson, and who?
Frances McDormand? Yeah, you're dead right. Who? Who the hell is Frances McDormand?
Very dear.
Is it? Okay. No. Yeah, no, Scott can have a go. I'm completely...
Do you want to go, Scott?
I don't think I'm getting anything either. All I can think of, so Frances McDormand also won an Oscar in 96, but then that's not going to work for Glenda Jackson or Blythe Danner, obviously. I'm guessing they've...
Do you not think Blythe Danner could be an Oscar nominee? What?
Winner. She's not an Oscar winner. So
you're right.
And Glenda Jackson won't have been nominated for any Oscars around the time. So I don't know. I guess they must all play a certain relation. No, because Frances McDormand and Joan Allen, I don't think they've ever been in a film together.
Did they play the same role on stage and win a Tony for it or something?
Close.
Oh.
Okay. Do you both give up?
I give up anyway.
So nominated at the same time for like same year Tonys for the same. Yeah. Okay.
They all lost to Joan Allen for Burn This. Like what? Imagine at that time in your career to like beating Glenda Jackson must be a.
My
a
God,
hoot.
That is wild.
Wow.
I actually, shame on me, thought you were going to say she lost to all of them, but
No. At the Tonys award people like Joan, Glenn has a few. I feel like people that do not get Oscars get Tonys.
I mean, I feel like Scott basically got that answer, so this way we could use you're a tiebreaker.
Well, that was the because yeah, this is what I was aiming for, so I'm really glad this happened. Okay, guys. So now you both have to come up with a number.
Okay.
How many Joans have been nominated for Best Actress?
Wow.
Like for in total.
Over is it 97 years?
Right.
Is that, or however many years it's been of the
Yikes, okay.
Academy Awards? How many do you think? And of course, whoever gets the nearest will get the point.
For Best Actress.
Only Best Actress.
Only
So
Best
sadly,
Actress, so no Joan Cusack.
no Joan Cusack.
Okay. Right.
Because like Meryl takes up 20 nominations out of however many, so that
Yeah, well, sure, that does drop the number down. I'm going to just stab and say 7.
Okay.
But that's
And
with
Declan-
only having 3 names in my head at this point in time.
God, I only have 2 names. I only have 2 names in my head. I'm drawing a complete blank. Okay, I'm only going to say 2. I can only think of 2.
Okay, so Declan is the winner.
Because there's 4.
Do you know what? No, there's 3. Like I'm shocked, but there was only 3 Jones ever nominated for Best Actress.
No.
Now,
So
I'm
Scott,
assuming.
did Scott
No,
say
he,
3, no?
he said 7, but he could think of 3.
All right, okay.
And weirdly, they've all been nominated 3 times. So firstly, obviously, Joan Allen. Then if we're going alphabetically, who knows who's next?
Joan Crawford.
Crawford, yeah, exactly.
Oh, Crawford. I had Joan Fontaine. That was
Yes,
the one.
that's the other one.
the
That's the
third.
other one I had.
So they're the 3.
No, hold on.
Isn't that
There's
wild?
another.
So there's quite a few more for supporting actress, but not.
Yeah. Wow.
Like Joan Blondell,
Joan Plowright, Joan Cusack.
Joan Plowright, Joan Cusack. Joanne Woodward was not included.
No,
Joanne.
no.
Yeah, that's fair.
She's a Joanne.
That's fair.
So yeah, well, congratulations, Declan. Your prize is to come back to talk about Lizard Person sometime.
What a prize that is! I feel like I only barely crawled over the finishing line with that one, though. So
no, it's a fair win.
No, it's great. So yes, get thinking on who you'll do next. And before that, I'm so intrigued to hear what we all want for Joan. Declan, you go first. You're the diehard fan boy here or fan girl here.
I mean, it's weird because the age of streaming and everything like that. You think there are so many more opportunities, and there are for actors and actresses especially. But Joan Allen hasn't done a huge amount in the last few years. I mean, she did Room, and she was amazing in that. That could have been that would have been such a great supporting actress comeback role for her. Yeah. And it's a weird one because that movie really peaked at the right time. I think it was quite a surprise nominee for picture and director that year. Like Brie Larson was always
shocking, yeah.
But I think it was Brie Larson was the focus of all the acting in it, because even like Jacob Tremblay, who I think is probably
so good,
top 2 best child performances ever. They could have all been carried along in that. I think that movie probably needed another couple of weeks or months just for people to see it and really get the impact of it. So, but what's interesting about Joan Allen in Room is that the only TV kind of I've seen her do, aside from, you mentioned that Stephen King one, she did a TV show a year after Room called The Family, which I've only started watching this week in preparation for this. And it's weird because she plays a politician who is also the mother of a child who's abducted and the child is returned. And it's a fascinating kind of composition almost of all the roles that she's played over the years. The show was cancelled after 1 season, but it's actually, I'm finding myself quite hooked on it. It's a bit of a mess, but it's actually quite compelling. I'm kind of, there's a whole mystery element to it that I guess TV is probably where she has the best opportunities, but I think, the roles that are like the mother or, the grandmother or something. And not that those roles can't be good and rewarding, but sometimes they're not the main focus of a movie. I'd love for her to get something like Grace and Frankie or something like that, something where she could really cut loose and just go totally, inventing vibrators or whatever. But maybe, a great, late career, supporting actress Oscar or something would be great, a really great supporting role, and that kind of really just brought in steady work for the rest of her, career. It would be. I just want the best for her.
Yeah.
Fair.
And what about you, Scott?
So I guess sort of going back to, I'll start with her kind of appearances in these maybe chillier domestic dramas like The Ice Storm. And where I feel she just slots in so well there. And when I was watching that film, I was kind of seeing parallels, or certainly tonal parallels, between that and Sean Durkin's The Nest, which just came out this year. And I think even if you look at Martha, Marcy May, Marlene, there's just something that the trickiness and the tone, I think she could just nail. So whatever Sean Durkin's doing next, or a couple down the line, I think there could be a welcome slot for Joan.
That's such a good call. She does that ambiguity so well. That's a really good idea.
In a similar tone, and now I feel like we're pigeonholing her in a way that we were saying maybe we don't want to do. But I was thinking Todd Haynes. So Todd Haynes does these stylistic films, but usually, as you're saying, tonally is very similar to those in, very cold. But usually there's a great part for a woman in his work, in whatever, like supporting or the lead. But I was thinking like the lead, and like maybe she was like trying to succeed in a male dominated world back in like the 70s or something. I've also been watching a lot of Succession, so it's like, what would a Todd Haynes Succession type story starring Joan Allen be?
That is wild.
So maybe we'll get Jesse Armstrong, who's the creator,
God,
or Lucy
yes.
Preble, and working with Todd Haynes on that, because I'd love to see her as like not matriarchal, because I don't want her to be like, you know, the Shakespeare throwing toys out, but some sort of like powerhouse character. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a really... Actually, you're after reminding me, I think Rod Lurie, the guy I'm talking about who wrote and directed The Contender, he actually wrote it specifically for Joan Allen, because, you know, he was a film journalist and he was so, you know, just captivated by her that he wrote a part just for her. So like, we need somebody to kind of like just write that role for her, and like let's just get her back like working like really steadily in movies again.
Yeah.
Oh no, good.
Because she's still relatively young. Like, if you think of all her contemporaries, they seem to be like, it seems to be a great time for women.
Yeah.
It's, you know, we've gone beyond the age of like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, where Joan Crawford and Betty Davis are in their 50s playing these like hags that are past it. You know, we have Nicole Kidman and people like that with production companies making these stories, but female centered.
Reese Witherspoon, let's get a Joan Allen project on the go. Reese, you're the most powerful woman in Hollywood at the moment. So
that's so true. So they start together in Pleasantville when Reese was up and coming.
You know, and it kind of loops back to what we were saying at the start. You know, what I was saying at the start about Joan Allen being a little bit older when she got when she kind of had her breakthrough. Just reminds me of the immortal line from Goldie Hawn in the First Wives Club, that there's 3 ages for women in Hollywood: Babe, District Attorney, and Driving Miss Daisy. So this is what women in Hollywood are up against.
Remake Driving Miss Daisy, but make it like in a more kind of woke sort of way with her in like 40 years time. I don't know, or whenever Joan wants to do it. Way too young. But yeah, I'd watch her in anything. And to be honest, after this, I will be so excited when I see her name linked to things, because that's surely going to happen more and more.
Yeah, and look, maybe, I mean, like she said, she pivoted towards movies so that she'd have just a bit more of a child-friendly, you know, hours. So maybe she'll, like, her child must be raised by now, so like maybe, you know, she'd want to go back to the theatre. If she came to London, I would be first in line to try and see her in something.
Sure.
She'd be.
But yeah, hopefully we see more and more of her. Wherever, on stage, on the small screen or big screen, whatever she wants to do.
Or like something really meta, where we have lots of people who've played first ladies on screen, so her and Sally Field,
Stockard Channing,
Natalie Portman, just any. It could be real first ladies, non-real first ladies just sitting down, just chatting about being first ladies, just together out of time. Just a wonderful time.
I thought you were going to say an ABBA-like-esque virtual tour.
Like exactly like that. So they got a purpose-built arena, and you go in, and they are there in virtual form as the first ladies.
Yeah, I'll buy my ticket right now. It's the gays will just keep this show in business for forever. So
gold mine. Well, thank you, Declan, for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much.
This was so much fun. I feel like I've probably tipped you over into a record running time with my ongoing love for Joan, but it was so much fun to talk about her.
And she deserves it.
And it's been so lovely to revisit, because I hadn't watched a lot of these movies in a long time, and honestly, they're so good. It's and I'm now on a mission to find those kind of lost things that she did in the noughties.
Amazing. But yeah, you'll have to come back for that Christina Ricci episode. Or, and I clocked you saying at the start, someone else who's on the list is Kathleen Turner.
Oh my God. Yeah. I love Kathleen Turner, so I would be more than happy to come back. More than happy.
And we definitely need to talk. We didn't get to talk about it, but Peggy Sue getting married or got married is such a great movie. And even if I watched it for Joan Allen, that didn't matter. I just absolutely loved it. And whatever Nick Cage is doing, I just loved it all.
Choices.
Choices.
Well, guys, thanks for having me. Happy to come back whenever.
Woohoo! Is there anything you want to shout out or anything? Do you want people to find you online?
Yeah, where can folk find you?
I'm on Twitter, all the time for work and pleasure. So my Twitter handle is @tweetdeck. That's tweet_deckdec. And yeah, you'll find me just talking shite over there all the time.
Well, that's what we like. Wonderful.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much, and for everyone for listening once again. If you've got any opinions on Joan Allen, or what we've missed, are you angry we haven't spoken about The Notebook? Let us know. You can get us on email at don'tknowherpod@gmail.com, or on Twitter and Instagram at don'tknowher_pod.
And please do leave us a rating and review wherever you're listening. That's really helpful for other people to find us. And please share on with at least one other person that you think would love to hear our love for these actors.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks again. And we look forward to you all joining us next time. Have a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever it might be.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.